Hey, what's going on, you guys? This is Madam, and I'm coming back to you once again. This time I'm going to go over to the Mississippi today, and this is the back channel portion. You can also find this on Twitter as well. And this is another article about former Governor PhilBryant. He helped Brett Favre secure welfare funding for the USM volleyball stadium, text revealed. Now, the first time I initially did this story, there was mention of text messages, but at time they wasn't able to be published, or I hadn't found an article that had actually published a text message. But Mississippi Today has been keeping a very close eye on the situation as it progresses, and I can show you a couple of text messages that they put out. So it says, never before seen text messages uh, show former Governor PhilBryant try to shepherd a proposal to use welfare funds on the construction of a new volleyball stadium for retired NFL player Brett Favre. A project prosecutor has called a scheme to defraud the government. Bryant has previously denied any involvement with the project, which has emerged as the centerpiece of a massive criminal scandal in which prominent officials misled or stole, misspent or stole millions in welfare fraud intended for the nation's poorest residents. The article is by Anna Wolfe, and this is going to be quite long, but this is just the update as far as I know in terms of Brett Favre and this whole welfare scandal in the midst of water crisis in Mississippi. Okay, it says text messages enter Monday into the state's ongoing civil lawsuit over welfare scandal reveals that former Governor PhilBryant pushed to make NFL legend Brett Favre's volleyball idea a reality. The text shows that the then governor even guided Favre on how to write a funding proposal so that it could be accepted by the Mississippi Department of Human Services, even after Bryant ousted the former welfare agency director John Davis for suspected fraud. Just left Brett Favre, Bryant text nonprofit founder Nancy New in July of 2019. Within weeks of Davis' departure, can we help him with his project? We should meet soon to see how I can make sure we keep your projects on course. When Favre asked Bryant how the new agency director might affect their plans to fund the volleyball stadium, Bryant assured him, I will handle that. Long story, but had to make a change. But I will call Nancy and see when it will what it will take, according to the filings in a text Favre forwarded to the New. The newly released text filed Monday by an attorney representing Nancy New's nonprofit shows that Bryant, Favre, and New, Davis, and others worked together to channel at least $5 million of the state's welfare to build a new volleyball stadium at University of Southern Mississippi, where Favre's daughter plays the sport. Favre received most of the credit for raising the funds to construct the facility. Bryant has for years denied any close involvement in steering of welfare funds to the volleyball stadium, though plans for the project even included naming the building after him, one text shows. A new friend of Bryant's wife, Deborah, ran a nonprofit that was in charge of spending tens of millions on flexible federal welfare dollars outside of the public view. What followed was the biggest public fraud case in state history, according to the state auditor's office. Nonprofit leaders had misspent at least $77 million in funds that were supposed to be help for the needy, forensic auditors found. New plead guilty to 13 felony counts related to the scheme, and Davis awaits trial, but neither Bryant nor Favre has been charged with any crime. And while the state-of-the-art facility represents the single largest known fraudulent purchase within the scheme, according to one of the criminal defendants' plea agreements, the state is not pursuing the matter in its own ongoing civil complaint. Current Governor Tate Reeves abruptly fired the attorney bringing the state's case when he tried to subpoena documents related to the volleyball stadium. Of course they had to get fucking rid of them. Of course they did. Of course they did. Oh my goodness. The messages also showed that a separate $1.1 million welfare contract Favre received to promote the program, subject to many of the national headlines, was simply a way to get more funding to the volleyball project. I could record a few radio spots for text, new according to the new filings, and whatever compensation could go to UMS. Okay, so this is the text messages right here. I'm trying to make them as big as I can. The light blue is Favre, and this is Nancy New. Take some time to go check that out, and I'm going to continue with my article. New, who is now aiding prosecutors as part of her plea deal, alleged that Bryant directed her to make the payments to Favre in a bombshell response to the complaint in July. The allegations in defense are not based on speculation or conjecture. The Monday court filing reads, the evidence suggests that the MDHS executives, including Governor Bryant, knew that Favre was seeking funds for the MDHS to build the volleyball facility, and participated in directing approval or providing for MDHS funds to be used for construction of the volleyball facility. The latest motion filed on the behalf of the nonprofit Mississippi Community Education Center represents the first time these messages were included text directly between New and Bryant and New and Favre have been made public. The messages are printed here exactly as they appear in the filing without correction. In July, the attorney for New and the nonprofit, Gary Brufkin, filed a subpoena on Bryant asking for the former governor's communication related to the volleyball project. On August the 26th, Bryant's recently hired attorney Billy Quinn filed an objection to the subpoena, refusing to turn over any records without a protective order. Quinn argued that Bryant's texts are protected by the executive privilege, and that producing them to the public would run afoul of existing gag orders in criminal cases. So this is crazy. So this is just basically just took a step from what the hell Trump is doing right now, allegedly in regards to some of his court cases. Executive privilege. I'm like, man, whatever. Anyway, Bufkin's latest motion include. Well, I already read that part. In short, the statement of Mississippi. Okay, no. All right, Bufkin's latest motion includes texts that the attorney picked not the entire text thread, and may only reflect one side of the story. In short statements to Mississippi Today for the story, Bryant did not offer any explanation for his communication. The new defense team's refusal to agree to the protective order, along with the failure to convey the governor's position to the court, unfortunately shows they are more concerned about pretrial publicity than they are about civil justice, Bryant said. Brufkin motioned for the court to compel Bryant to produce the documents, arguing they are central to the news defense. Defendant responsibly relied on the governor PhilBryant acting within his broad statutory authority, statutory authority as chief executive of the state, reads News July response to the complaint, including authorities over MDHS and TANF, and his extensive knowledge of the permissible TANF expenditures from 12 years as state auditor, 4 years as lieutenant governor, and a number of years as governor leading up to and including the relevant time period. Brufkins told Mississippi Today that the governor's involvement in the building the volleyball stadium suggests by the text messages leads an air of credibility to the project, which is important to our defense. We do not believe a protective order shielding the governor's documents from the public view, and thus limiting our ability to use them in the court or public proceedings in the support of the defense is appropriate, Bufkin said. Federal regulations prohibit states from using using money from the welfare program called Temporary Assistance for Needy Families, TANF, on brick and mortar or construction of buildings. The scheme is circumvent federal regulations in order to build the volleyball stadium has already resulted in a criminal conviction. News son Zach newly admitted in his April plea agreement to defrauding the government when he participated in a scheme to disguise the UMS construction project as a lease as a means of circumventing the limited proposed grant strict prohibition against brick and mortar construction projects in violation of Mississippi Code and 97-7-10. Wow. It's a lot to digest, and if y'all still here, thank you so much. I'm gonna have to do a part 2, and I'm just gonna break this up because this is a lot of information, and I want to at least do it some justice in allowing you to get the full story of the article. So I will see you guys in part 2.